Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today, man, we're going to be talking about game developers and them basically getting upset at you for criticizing their video games, for being mad at them, for trashing them, whatever it may be, after they put out subpar products knowingly after you purchased them, expecting you to be okay with it. And to a greater extent, we'll be talking about the behavior of online gaming communities. Is it acceptable the way people treat game developers? Things like that, right? So, one of my most anticipated games of 2023 was a game many of you might know, okay? I played the predecessor to this game quite a bit for gameplay here on the YouTube channel. It's one of my personal favorite video games of all time. In 2023, I was really excited for the release of Cities Skylines II, okay? As many of you were, I'm sure, the original City Skylines, in my opinion, is one of the best city-building video games of all time. I personally attribute it with literally reviving the city builder genre in general, and given the growth of technology and the genre and gaming in general since the release of City Skylines like a decade ago up until, well, just a few months ago, there was just so much excitement and everything, right? Well, if you're in the community or you've seen any news on the game, you might be aware City Skylines 2 came out on PC and it was not good. Now keep in mind, this is a game I personally play quite frequently, even still, and I have dozens of hours put into the game already. But I mean, this is just the truth of the matter here, right? I mean, Colossal Order, the people who made the game, they did not have the game ready for launch. That's just objective. I mean, the vast majority of people trying to play the game on PC literally couldn't even run the game. Obviously, it's a very strenuous game to run. There's a lot of simulation going on in the background. There's a fucking huge scope for how much you can build. It's going to be a pretty performance-intensive game, but I mean, it was so poorly optimized and so poorly built and ready for PC, because keep in mind, the console version was delayed because it wasn't even as ready as the PC version, which wasn't ready. And, you know, people, they couldn't even load the fucking game up, or they couldn't even get the game running adequately. They couldn't even really play the game. And so over the last few months, the folks at Colossal Order, they've dedicated a lot of time to trying to update the game, get it ready to go, get, you know, especially right now, the mod features and everything going so that there's obviously community support. They're still working on the console version, which is due in a few months, and it's kind of a shit show. Let's just call it for what it is. As much as I enjoy the game, it's in a pretty poor state. Most of the community cannot even come close to enjoying the game as much as I have. Thankfully, I'm in a pretty good position due to doing YouTube, making good investments in the stock market, the other things that I do in my personal life in order to earn an income. I was able, due to making content, to purchase a $5,000 creator PC a few years ago. It's pretty fucking beefy. It's got, you know, like a 4090 in it, you know, it's like 64 gigs of RAM, really great processor, right? So it runs the game as well as it probably can be ran. And I mean, you're seeing the gameplay, it's very much so sped up in order to not only hide some of the hitches and the bugs and whatnot and the freezes that it goes through, but also to make it not boring to watch. Well, the City Skylines community has been growing increasingly frustrated and impatient with the developers because they did, truthfully, what a lot of game developers do nowadays. They released an early access product, didn't label it as early access, and then they got people to basically pay full price for it, and then, well, the game is still not very playable. It doesn't have the mod features everybody's been waiting on. The game still doesn't run for most people very well. And recently, the CEO and the dev team kind of addressed what they're calling some pretty big toxicity and whatnot in their community because of this entire thing. So I wanted to go ahead and talk about that and kind of respond. As somebody who is a super fan of the game, is I absolutely love City Skylines, man. Like, this is one of my go-to favorite franchises because this is realistically a much larger issue than just City Skylines. I mean, this is like a gaming industry problem in general now, where developers, they just release the game, it's not ready to go, people are pissed off, and then you gotta wait 6 months to a year worth of updates and everything to the game to actually get it in the state that it's in. So this is one of the rare instances you're gonna hear me talk to a game studio and me not hate them, because this is not Activision, this is not EA, this is not these kinds of folks, right? This is a much smaller team, this is a much more dedicated team, and to a certain extent, I understand where they're coming from. The problem, obviously, is the timing and whatever, but I'm going to go ahead and just summarize it for you guys here. I'm not going to read the whole post, but I'll read the part that we'll be addressing. So, Last but not least, we have seen a growing tendency of toxicity in our community, something we've not experienced to this extent before, not only directed towards our devs, but also our fellow community members, resulting in people hesitating to engage with the community. In the long run, this will really hurt not only the mood and the happiness of community members, but also discourage creativity and modding, something we would be very sad to see. We have always treasured having the devs present on the different social platforms and having direct communication with the community, but our biggest responsibility will always be protecting the team and making sure they work in a safe environment so they're allowed to do their best, staying motivated and productive. So we hope we can all work together for the devs to be able to stay and be continuously active. As the mentions of this in previous entries do not seem to have moved the needle, perhaps you have a constructive way of telling us how we can improve the way we communicate with each other. Should we add more moderation, or is the only option to pull back our engagement on our end? How can we make sure the community is a safe place for you to share your thoughts and hopes for the game? It gives, I guess, a couple basic generic ideas to start with here, right? So I feel like we've kind of seen a trend of this from gaming developers, right? Where, like I said, they may release their product unfinished, buggy, whatever the problems may be, right? And fans, they get pissed off because they spend money on these games, they get excited for these games, and then ultimately they get disappointed by these games, right? And this is no different. I was definitely disappointed the first time I loaded up Skylines II. To a certain extent, I'm still pretty disappointed with the state of the game. I mean, the simulation's broken. As playable as it is on my high-end machine, I think that they could have added more base content to this game. I think it realistically should have been delayed an entire year on top of the release date it had last year. This should be realistically a game I'm not even playing right now. Or if I am playing it, it should be in like a pre-order closed access beta where we can give feedback to the developers. They just simply released their game too early, and it wasn't ready, it was fucked up, and now they're paying the price for it. Now, I'm not saying that treating the developers like complete garbage is acceptable, because truth be told, there's a lot of people in the gaming community who take things absolutely too far, but I mean, to pretend like this wasn't anticipatable or whatever, right, is just stupid. Like, these developers at Colossal Order and whatnot have to remember, you guys are the ones who released your game knowing that it was not in a state to play. That's why before the game was even released, you were kind of trying to soften the blow of everything with some very well-worded, words of the week and everything to the community. We aren't the ones who put the game out on the market in the state that it's in. And by the way, this is not a cheap game. This is, as it stands right now, just for the base version of the game, a $50 game on Steam. And it's not worth $50, so, rightfully so, a lot of people have been pretty goddamn pissed about the entirety of the situation. Now, I have seen some of this toxicity firsthand and whatnot in the discussion and in the community boards and whatever, but truth be told, at least from my, interactions with the community, the vast majority of people have been pretty nice about the whole thing. I mean, the sad reality is, in the gaming community, there's always the weird people who do get too angry about shit and whatnot, right? And they send developers death threats or bomb threats and insane shit. I don't really know the extent that a lot of that stuff's going, but now that I've kind of seen this, response from the CEO of the company and whatever here, right? This is Paradox Interactive, the people developing the game, who work for, I think Colossal Order is the publisher of the game, right? Or maybe it's the other way around, I can't remember off the top of the head, but these guys, they put this out, and basically now the hateful comments and the, despising comments towards the developers have actually fucking skyrocketed from what I've seen. I checked the Steam discussion boards last night after seeing the news article on this whole thing, and people were just in there shredding the developers. So if I could give a piece of advice, don't interact, or I would say don't acknowledge the people being too shitty like that. It sucks that you have to not do that or whatever. We can't even talk about the fact that people are treating us weird or whatever, but you're literally only emboldening people to act that way when they're angry. If, for instance, at this whole thing here, they say, well, what should we do? Should we add more moderation, or is our only option to not communicate on our end? Now, as somebody who has been respectful to the developers, I've been nothing but fucking nice, right? And trust me, I could have done what I would usually do. I could have got on here day one and destroyed this game and been a complete douchebag to the developers. But I was more patient with them because, unlike Call of Duty or, GTA Definitive Edition, this is not a company with 7,000 employees ready to make a game, right? This is a much smaller team. I'm a little more understanding about things like that, even though I realistically shouldn't have to be. But I, as a paying consumer and fan of this series, I don't personally really appreciate the vague threat from the developers to stop communicating regarding the game, considering the fact that you guys fucked this game up to begin with. So now it's your job, literally, to not only fix the game, which I appreciate the effort that they've put into doing so, but it's your job to also communicate with the community about this whole thing, right? Like, you don't get to put out a AAA title where you fuck it up, and then as a result of people being angry about it, you threaten to not communicate with them. That's not how this works. And so as a result of this, it seems like the, I guess, general view around City Skylines II has gotten markedly worse than it already was as a broken game. Now, sure, I know the developers, they don't want to receive death threats and things like that, and they shouldn't. They don't deserve to deal with things like that, but the reality of the situation and the fact of the matter is that developers that do this to themselves need to learn how to handle these things better. Now, of course, it sucks that they're going through shit like this, but I gotta say, I remember playing City Skylines 1 and being a pretty big part of the community, and even as the developer said, it was never this toxic before. The only reason it's gotten this toxic is by the bad faith of the developers, and that's not a justification or an excuse, but it is a reason. And we've seen this become more and more common with games, it feels like, where, you know, like I said, they release fucked up and unpolished and whatnot. People get mad, people refund, people scream and cry and complain on the forums, and then the developers, they want to roll around and cry and mope that they've been attacked and shit on by people, right? Now, also, too, like I said, I've been looking through a lot of the community discussions and whatnot, and I looked back into, like, before this announcement even came out, and I gotta say, a vast majority of the comments, even if they were, critical of the game, they weren't what I would call so toxic that you have to threaten to not interact with your community. Now, I don't know what's going on in the background, you know, behind closed doors or whatever, that they're seeing in private or whatever, but from the public face of all of this, right, this was honestly a very unnecessary statement by the developers. Now, if they came on and they're like, hey guys, we've seen a lot more toxicity in our community channels and whatnot, be nice to one another, please be nice to the developers, we're genuinely trying to communicate with you and fix these problems, but we can't do so if everybody's being negative and not providing legitimate advice or whatever, that would make sense. But to say all of that and then also wrap it with a thinly veiled threat of, hey, even though we fucked up our game and communicating with you is the only way to fix it, we'll just go ahead and not fix our game or address our community if you keep treating us poorly, that is not the response. That is not the route to go. Not only for your fans who have been nice to you and have been patient through this whole process, but all it does is irk the bad actors to only be 10 times the bad actor they were before, because now you've given them a reason to do so. So overall, doesn't really seem to make much sense in general, that situation, but like I said, with the rise of games coming out like this, it seems like this is more and more of a possibility for video games, and just in general, I'd like to see developers actually take a little more accountability for the shit that they do. So with that being said, man, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus, make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus. Well, playing City Skylines 2, even though most people can't, and signing out. And that's a wrap on this video, but a big shout out to my Optimus Nation supporters. You guys are the real MVPs here. Your support with just $10 a month unlocks a treasure trove of exclusive videos constantly updated, archived live stream VODs, and early access to all new uploads. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.